So I just want to go back on one concept, which is quite important to, so today, these are what we're gonna cover. One person, one vote, one token, one vote. We're gonna see the democratic token allocation, the meritocratic token allocation, and the next two. But today we're gonna start now from this. What happens when one person, one vote? So therefore, this is the scenario we're gonna now experience in the Dot Voter app. So kindly, now if you go on your Dot Voter app, as I'm now sharing my screen, please, for the next 5 minutes, think about one proposal that you would like to point out in this community, in this breakout room session. If you have any question, you can tell me, but I hope I've been clear, and you can now write your own proposal and with your initial next to the proposal.
Sorry, I've got a question. What kind of proposal for the platform or anything else?
Yeah, so based on, let's say, on the concept that today, I think you had quite inspirational speakers in terms of how, let's say, the marketplace might evolve, or what about the human development thesis that we need to consider, how cultural lenses need to be embedded in platform design. If you have anything that could be inspirational to bring in the community, you can write your own draft proposal in one sentence.
So the idea is to gather a list of proposals that we are going to vote on with different methods of voting, so we can see how different styles of voting can prioritize proposals differently in a community.
Okay. So before, thanks. So now some proposals are coming. So the idea is to get 5 proposals potentially that we can understand later how they will travel through the different governance models that we will explore today.
Renzo, can you switch it to one vote on the Dot Voter app?
Yes.
Perfect. Because the first method of voting that we will explore here is one person, one vote.
Yeah, I think I left the previous section. Okay, so I think we have 5 proposals, even 6. So now for the next 5 minutes, please vote on these proposals. And we're gonna pick the top 3.
So to vote, you click on one of the proposals and you'll see a little dot show up on when you click. And if you want to remove that dot and move it to another proposal, you can click on the dot and click somewhere else. So essentially just read through the proposals and cast your vote on which proposal you think is the most beneficial for the community. And in this exercise, we each get 1 vote. So this is a one person, one vote exercise.
Okay, we have some proposal without the
initials.
The initials. So I just want to ask, I will name just a proposal, take out money from elections. If you can just drop your initials, even in the chat, it's fine with your proposal. And then Marc-Antoine will will look after this for reason that you will see later. And a similar I think we have
some great proposals here.
Yeah.
So one person, one vote is kind of the standard democratic voting system we see in most of our governance institutions worldwide. Widely we consider this democratic because every person is equal, every person should have a say. But there are some limitations to this style of governance as well. Does anyone have an idea as to how this style of voting would fall short while we're going out through these and voting on these proposals?
Tyranny of minority.
Right,
okay.
Tyranny of the majority. Is that what you meant?
Of the minority.
Yeah, against the minority, yes.
Against the minority, yes, correct. So in other words, if there is, more people that want one thing than another, they'll always get their way. So this is, part of the issue with one person, one vote is you're either all in or all out. There's no in between. There's no gray zone. You can't be 50% for something or 33% for something. You're either 100% for or 100% against. So this is one of the fallbacks or the drawbacks of one person, one vote system. So has everyone got a chance to put their vote in for the proposal?
Yeah, exactly. For the sake of the flow that we'll go through together, I think I'll just give you 2 more minutes if you want to cast your votes, and then I kindly ask not to move any more your vote as it is, and we'll go through just the next step. I guess there are here very fascinating proposals. Okay. So now, as I think that Jeff was kind of triggering your critical thinking about these. Now, if I assume that everybody made own decision on this vote, on this proposal section. So now what I will do, I will share again, 1 second. I will share my screen to show where we are. So here, so what we're experiencing here is that one person, one vote. But as we were just discussing with one question from Jeff, so this doesn't really capture or portray the intensity of preference. So now we're gonna experience the idea of one token, one vote. And we're gonna distribute to you 10 tokens based on just the same proposal. So now I will just move on. Please don't, you don't need to move anything on the app. I will just changing the settings. So now, at the moment, now you have in your power, you have 10 tokens. So now you can decide for the next 5 minutes to think about this proposal even in a different way. So you have your vote is based on your resources of 10 tokens, and then you can cast your vote in a slightly different way. So I just want to give you 3-5 minutes to distribute your tokens. on these proposals.
How many tokens do we each get now?
10 tokens, each of you.
Wow. Okay.
There's a little counter top right.
So with more tokens, you can consider this almost like each token is worth 10% of your opinion. So if you want to move forward with 2 or 3 or 4 different proposals, you can value them at different amounts.
So yeah, in other words, you have like different layers of your voting power that you can spread over different proposals. So so you can just have more careful where you want to put your resources and create a differentiated approach.
There's some great conversations going on in the chat as well.
Yeah, just to let you know that as I mentioned before in the agenda, we're gonna have 10 minutes of feedback to look at the different approaches that we just experienced, and we're gonna have some question regarding these activities, based on also what you wrote in the chat.
And of course, there are a few aspects of governance that we aren't really giving full opportunity to. Of course, discussion and discourse and debate are very important. And also, you know, tabling these proposals. We went with .voter app because it's a very simple app that you can just send a link and we can easily add proposals and vote and see the impact of, you know, people's opinions. But of course, there's due process in you know, real world governance processes that include dialogue and you know, amendments to proposals and so on, which we'll get into a little bit in a exercise in a little bit.
Yeah, so on one end, so there is some limitation here, but on the other hand, I think we would like to create even a dialogue based on what you and together we are trying to convey.
We've got a few popular proposals here. This is great.
Okay, so I think Market One has the best job probably. They're going to enjoy to look at the best proposal. So I would like to just give one more minute to see if you want to move around your tokens, and then we just open the floor for some discussion. I would like to share some questions to you, but feel free to move the token again yeah, I can give you another couple of minutes, and then we will address aspects of this. Okay, so I guess I think we have 11 proposals, and I think I don't see any more tokens moving around. So I guess at the moment there is a sort of temporary status quo. So I would like now to ask you. So if you consider what happened from one person, one vote, and one token, one vote. So I think you might have looked at the proposal from a different perspective. Might be resources, might be budget, might be values. So what was your perception or in your thought process? What happened when we switched the settings and you address the valuation of the proposal later on? Would you like to just share anything that just came into your process to share in this conversation?
I was influenced by where the other dots were.
Okay.
That didn't strike me as perhaps optimal.
So you had a sort of a visual influence on...
Yes, I couldn't refuse it either. I kept trying to, because I knew it was influencing me in a way I didn't want it to, but it still did.
Okay.
That's a dangerous feedback loop.
Maybe another one, less attachment to the dots. We have plenty.
Okay. That's interesting.
I think to make this better, each person that proposed something should be given at least a few minutes to describe, to basically sell their idea.
Absolutely.
And show how it's related to the other ideas or how it compares.
We were going to do that, but it just, there were too many, there were too many options and we're going to run out of time.
No, actually, Dan, this is a good point. We will actually try to address this dialogue in the next exercise. So partly this will happen, but we just want to go gradually from one person, one vote, one token, one vote, and then have this discussion and see also your observation was something that you felt it was limited. So you want to have a dialogue. So yes, that's one. I think.
Like, I mean, just as one example, I mean, I could have sold the whole thing and said, all of your ideas could be principles in my proposal. And therefore it's a win-win. And then we can even add other ideas to it, right? So it's like, don't waste your ideas on that. Come up with something, you know, completely different.
Yeah.
I think with 10 tokens, you have the feeling that you can, well, do more. And I think that's encouraging to change your opinion. And then I think you are looking on, yeah, because with one vote or one token, I say, well, okay. And I think with more tokens, there's a really dynamic feeling and dynamic action is going on. It was motivating me to change a little bit. And yeah.
You can have more nuanced opinion.
And also kind of like a scarcity versus abundance. Like if I only have one token, I feel very selfish and I want to cast a vote for my own proposal. But if I have like more tokens, then I feel more likely to support others' proposals.
I supported myself the most, and I supported adjacent proposals which would help my proposal come to fruition.
Would you mind to say again? In the beginning, I lost.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It sounds like the Verizon ad. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Now it's better.
Good. So I was saying I supported myself the most. Initially, I went out and looked at different proposals, and I gave some tokens because I liked the proposal. I just wanted to make a short list. But then eventually, I regathered a lot of the tokens to my own proposal, and 7 out of 10. And then the other 3 I put into 3 other proposals that would help my proposal get elected. Conceptually.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to hang out with this group anymore. This is not my kind of group.
Sorry, Philip.
Did anybody, given that you were given 10 tokens, did anybody with that abundant, the abundant number of tokens, did anybody have a tendency to vote for like the crazy idea? Did it make you more, did did you become more risk-taking because of it?
No, I
Did you
tended to
really
be a
just
bit.
kind of pile into your own initiative?
I tended to give a few tokens to everybody, to disperse a lot, because I saw so much that had value.
So I was open to the idea of having to take all the 10 and put it on other proposals. If they, from a first principles point of view, if theirs was more fundamental to to society. My thesis is that if you take money out of elections, you can rewrite the law with benevolent citizens who would be doing a tour of duty in politics, as in service, in government service, as opposed to politics. And so you can then, the law being rewritten, all of the other things could be possible. The ownership of these platforms and all that just becomes a byproduct. So I was looking for more first principle conversation than maybe if we have a discussion to the point of the other gentleman. If we had a chance to understand the proposals in more in detail, then maybe I would have voted all of my tokens on somebody else's proposal.
Yes, no, again, I think, Josh, you will kind of experience partly the opportunity to reframe your vote just as in a few minutes. Thanks for this. So I think at this point now I think if there's anybody else who would like to share any more feedback. Why, for example, you moved the token at some point. When I ask if you still have the opportunity, would you move the token? There's been any motivation, or assuming there was a lack of presenting the proposal? Does anybody else want to add any more feeling or need to change the token allocation?
I suppose I was just going to say, Renzo, I'm kind of curious. Okay, here's a kind of provocation. There's a kind of a thesis of direct democracy somehow getting smarter. And actually, it doesn't. Actually, direct democracy doesn't make us smarter. It actually has the risk of making us dumber, because we vote on things we actually don't know anything about. And the idea of having universal knowledge about everything to allow us to make accurate decisions about everything seems to be a kind of technological fallacy led by quite a lot of technologically literate people, but fundamentally misunderstands the kind of complexity of knowledge and allocation of resource to knowledge. So I wonder whether what we're exploring here, like, is there a dimension that we're missing out? Like, is there a dimension of kind of actually the relationship of allocation of votes to individuals as opposed to allocation of votes to ideas, and making that more dynamic? So I'm just curious about the kind of philosophical intent, because I have a slight problem. Wisdom of the crowd, as somebody mentioned, is great for certain things, and we all know what it's great for. It's great for telling you how many jelly beans there are in a tub. It's not very good for telling you about complex things in a complex emergent situation, because there is always asymmetry of information. So I wonder if you can give a bit of a talk as to the underpinning thesis that you're exploring here with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, no, you go, Jeff. Yeah.
So this is actually leads us right into the next exercise, is how do we allocate these tokens? So thus far, we've looked at one person, one vote, which is democratic, everyone gets one vote. Then we've looked at one token, one vote, where tokens are allocated again democratically. So everyone gets 10 tokens, so everyone has an equal say. But Indy brings up a very great point. Should everyone have an equal say? And when we move into one token, one vote ecosystems, I mean, this has to be done very carefully because we don't want anyone to be unheard, but perhaps we want some people to be heard more. Maybe if we're running a DAO and Renzo has put all of the effort into this DAO, he should have more tokens. He should earn more tokens for the effort he's put in, or the expertise that he has and brings to this DAO should be worth more than someone who has just joined and doesn't have as many tokens. So Actually, Renzo, would you mind closing the board on this one just so we can see the top proposals from a democratically aligned 10 tokens per person?
Okay. Yeah. So I think without is everyone has still the link. You can see now, unless I think for the sake of the clarity, I can share again the screen. Or I think you have the screen, Jeff, right? So I think we can see. Yeah. So you can see now the top. There is, I think, the top 3 are at the moment just the platform should be owned by its own user, using DAO to enable human flow between cities and rural areas, and commitment engine, a mechanism for sovereign individuals to make public commitment and be held. Socially accountable, accelerated with feedback. So I think these are the 3 that we're gonna bring in the next exercise. And I think this will give you the flow to answer to your question, Indy, that you asked me about what's the rationale behind this, is just to visit some limitation opportunities from what as a community we want to value as share resources, participation, a dialogue, and what actually the cost of it. So, okay, so I think thank you, Jeff, I will follow you this now. So I think here we found the problem, the solution that I think now we can consider meritocracy if then there is some limitation here. So who actually brought in more resources than others? Let's say, in this case, let's say 100 tokens, then he has more power than others. So I think now what we could do is just to move on the Miro board. I think I will share the link. Okay, perfect. Can you share the link, Jeff, or the Miro board in the chat? Then I can just carry on. So everyone now should have access to the board we designed. And if you just press on the first profile on the top of the Miro board, you will see where Jeff is. And therefore, that's what I'm talking about now in terms of how we look at meritocratic voting example, where I have the all power because I created, or I have more manage some resources, therefore I'm going to decide. But it's a quite limited approach, even though somebody might not have interest in taking the decisions. Now we're going to move into another example, which is this quadratic voting. And quadratic voting is, I think, in the context, I just want to bring in an example that you might have heard happen in Colorado last year. I think they allocated 40 million, if I'm not wrong, dollars over 100 different bills. And so they were struggling with self-interest voting, given that most legislators, I think, were sponsoring many of these bills. So eventually, I think this test showed pretty clear signal on which items and where the most important need to be funded. And I think eventually the winner was equity pay for equal work, I guess. But the most important is just to give you the first glance of quadratic voting is a system that helps increase the diversity of decision makers by empowering smaller groups to make their voices counting, basically heard, with a price mechanism that give an accurate signals whether there is a strong preference of a minority that outweighs the weak preference of a majority. So I think this could be, I think, was a successful experiment in Colorado. Of course, there are other type of voting, but now we want to go through this. Before I leave the floor to Jeff, it's linked a little bit on the idea of technology in terms of how technology could enhance these activities against our decline of democracy based on meritocratic or democratic. But these again are thought-provoking insight that I would like to discuss after you will do the exercise that Jeff will guide you through. So Jeff, up to you.
I have
awesome. Yeah, please.
I have a question. I mean, one of the things that's not, you know, going back to Socrates here, and he was not a big fan of democracy, and meritocracy has also been blown out of the water. And I'm not even sure if you're using it in the way I even understand it. The whole concept of meritocracy is even kind of, that doesn't even hold water anymore. Right. And what I'm not hearing is wisdom. You know, having information is one thing. Having knowledge is another thing, and having wisdom is a third thing. So the fact that you're making democratic decisions or meritocratic decisions, if there's no wisdom involved, it's, you know, I mean, I'm here in the States, and you know, I'm actually, I still kind of leaning toward that democratic thing. I still play that game, but I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to turn into Socrates here, and I don't have a lot of trust in my, in the wisdom of my fellow citizens. So that's what I'm not hearing here. And I'm wondering if you could address that.
So thus far, we're exploring different voting mechanisms, not proposing that any one is the be all, the end all. Actually, I don't think there is a be all, end all correct governance for all situations. So we're just exploring a bunch of different alternatives, looking at the positives and the downsides, and exploring how we can mitigate the downsides while, you know, making use of what these tools are useful for in the context where they operate. So we looked at the democratic allocation of tokens, 10 tokens per user, but we realized that this is potentially a problem because does on a plane, does everyone have equal say? No, the pilot has more say. So in this case, we might consider that a meritocratic token allocation. The pilot has 100 tokens because they have the expertise and the training, and the passenger may only have, you know, 1 token. They can get on the plane or not. Sorry, Marc-Antoine, did you have something to add, or I'm not sure if your hand is up?
Yes, it is. Dan, I agree totally with what you're saying. On the other hand, it's always, okay, it's a delicate balance between choosing the aims of the collectivity and having expertise to choose correct means towards the common aims. Now, of course, even the aims have, you can have unwise aims. It's not as simple as that. But I think that what is very, one thing I'm exploring personally is mapping out the consequences of decisions and have people, and this is where collective intelligence is good at. If you do this, what could go wrong? And draw on collective intelligence to map out possible side effects and possible stumbling blocks. And make people aware of, is that something important that will affect me? And there's a place for vote. Is that likely, unlikely? And this is classic wisdom of crowds. Is that an important effect or not? That's classic wisdom of crowds. So there's a lot of ways to make these weave together the deliberative aspect and the numbers game of voting. And again, there's so many ways to play with the numbers game, and that's what we're looking at most now. But I agree that without balancing it out with the deliberative aspect, we're in trouble.
So it sounds like to some degree that if I'm understanding you, Mark, if the deliberative aspect is done in a wise way, where you kind of say, these are the pros and cons and work through, you know, these are all the ramifications and the impacts that could happen in this, you're guiding the voters through the process of wisdom, and therefore you're guarding against unwise voting a little bit.
It's guiding and it's not guiding, is that I expect the community to be doing the mapping out of the possibilities. So it's not top down either.
Okay.
Yeah, but you're kind of
but that's another conversation.
You're sharing the process of the whys.
Let's have that offline because we're in a bit of a schedule. But
yeah,
I'm just saying numbers are in that we're exploring numbers. It has to be balanced. For now.
I guess no. I think all of these points will be addressed. They're all very powerful. But I think now we need to also, as everyone here is trying to look at what incentives of, okay, where is the wisdom come from? I think now in this exercise, you might experience hopefully partly of this, and then we can have a critical conversation on this. So I think, Jeff, probably you can carry on the exercise that we designed.
Yeah, sure. So we've gone into meritocracy, and I understand there are some different understandings of the term meritocracy, and we're not proposing that it is better than democracy. It is just an alternative to where people with more expertise or people with more skin in the game have more say. So this is in response to Indy's point as well, that we're not just giving direct democracy, everyone gets equal say. Perhaps in some communities, some people should have more say. But of course, we have to be careful, because if we give, in this example, Renzo, all of the power, he calls all of the shots. So even though Jeff and Marc-Antoine were voting for proposals 1 and 2, Renzo got to decide ultimately which proposals pass. So this is one of the downsides of giving someone more say. And quadratic voting, as we looked at, is basically a way to rebalance that voting power. So quadratic voting, for anyone who hasn't heard of it before, basically you can vote more than once on a proposal, but if you vote more, the first time will cost you 1, the second time will cost you 4, the third time will cost you 9. So this is the idea of the quadratic. It's the number of votes squared is the number of tokens that it costs you. So you can see in this example, Renzo is still voting as much as in the previous example, the meritocratic example, but because of the quadratic balancing, his votes are worth less. So he has more say, but he doesn't just get to run the show. So this is basically a way that we can balance the voting power. We can give some people more say, but we don't let them make all the decisions. Does that make sense? Does that bring up any questions or concerns for people?
I would like to add something about, I think we're missing a whole dimension of the cost of each proposal. How much does it cost in monetary terms, but also in time?
Yeah,
definitely.
One aspect, sorry, just because this question, I think they're all good to keep them right after, because in this part now with Jeff guiding us on the proposal, you guys, you can share changes, you can share insights, and even costs to the proposal, like you just mentioned, that might be maybe not very a driving force for the proposal or not. And based on this will be allocated, your changes will value something. So, so therefore, from now, in the next 5 minutes, even 7 minutes, I'm asking you for the free proposal that you can see here, or anyone else who want to suggest anything about this proposal. That's the moment that you can share question, insights, changes. You can do this in the chat.
Yeah,
or
basically this is a toy version of the deliberative democracy. We're saying, can someone improve or criticize an existing proposal and add something to it? So please put it in the chat and I will transfer to the board.
Yeah, so kindly, anything you have in mind, just in the Zoom chat, just drop there your insights, anything, and then Marc-Antoine will do the development of these chats on there. But now it's the time that you can do in the chat as much as even in the dialogue. You can also vocalize this, but first in the chat. So and Marc-Antoine will see who actually is creating an insight, who wants to discuss as an aspect of the proposal.
And please number, say this is an amendment or a criticism of 1, 2, 3 in the order there.
Yes, good point. Thanks, Marc-Antoine.
My computer's behaving and not letting me copy paste. Hopefully this will be corrected soon. Yeah, it seems I cannot copy paste. I don't know why, or if Renzo or Jeff can do it in my
Okay,
case.
so you, Marc-Antoine, okay. Jeff, can you try, or tell me if I...
Oh, now it's letting me. Okay, sorry.
Okay, no worries. So I guess this is, again, I would like to even point out again that when we look at these free proposals, I think we can share even some questions if something is not clear or something it doesn't make sense, or you want to actually suggest something completely different from the proposal. So I think that's the moment to have an open space.
And while we carry out these amendments and suggestions to the proposals, you can note along the left-hand side, each of us starts, so we're doing a blended democratic meritocratic system. So everyone starts with one token. So everyone has a say in this proposal system, but everyone who suggested a proposal in the first exercise of this session gets an additional token. And everyone who suggests an amendment or some dialogue around any of these proposals gets an additional token. So most people will end up with between 3 and 4 tokens that we can cast in this exercise.
I just want to remind you that whoever is writing, you can also ask questions directly to the person who created the proposal. We can have a dialogue to understand better why a proposal might make more sense than others.
Zoom's not letting me copy paste. Sorry, this is getting ridiculous. Apologies.
No worries, Marc-Antoine.
I get a beach ball.
Yeah. Jeff, can you help me with this, or shall I do it?
Yeah, I can help also. I just don't know where you left off, Marc-Antoine.
I did the first 2 proposals. I'll take care of the tokens meanwhile.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Okay, just a couple of more minutes. If anyone wants to suggest anything different in their proposal, even questions. Yes, like, yeah, I can see many questions about some proposal, for example, from Dan, or anyone who has doubt that you want to discuss. Okay.
Okay, so I hope we have some additional tokens for Philip, for TM USA, for Dan Feldman.
Yeah.
This is great, great conversation, everybody. And of course, this is a very important part of the democratic governance process is discussion, debate, amendment, And we're not giving it, you know, a full credence here because this is a sort of a demonstrative exercise. But essentially, we wanted to show that you can have a mix of democratic and meritocratic token allocation. And then we can use these tokens. Do you want to give another minute for additional?
Yeah, I think I think I can see people that are still active on the chat to give. I think Philip shared some insights, so I think he needs more tokens, which is good.
I like how Philip is gaming the algorithm to get additional tokens.
Yeah, why not?
See, as soon as the black box revealed itself.
Yes, yes, very good point. As soon as something becomes a metric, then it becomes optimized for. This is, oh, I always forget the name of that study where they were studying in corporations efficiency measures, and anything they chose as a metric suddenly became optimized for, which we also see in you know, kind of the downfall of social media. As soon as you optimize for the like or the click, you get, you know, outrage. Everyone's optimizing for outrage because that gets the most engagement, but that also pushes us apart as a society. So we need to be very careful what we optimize for. Thanks for pointing that out, Philip. Extra token for you, for sure.
Yeah, but try not to address a centralization of token, Philip. So you should have all the tokens.
I've got a question concerning the Miro table. Now I have 5 tokens. How can are these tokens, or why do I have 5? Because first I had 3. So it's due to my comments in the commentaries, or?
Yes,
correct.
It's based on the comments.
Okay. So Marc-Antoine has been adding tokens to people participating in suggesting proposals and amendments and so on. So now if you...
Can I move them because I'm on my phone and I can't?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks for saying this. Everyone need support to move the tokens. Like Tobias, just please tell us and we will move the token. Or if you are completely independent, you can move the token yourself.
No, I'm not able.
I can help you move your tokens. Which proposal would you like to vote for?
Well, I would like to support the platform should be owned by its users. So I would put 3 on this and 1 on the other 2. So 1 each for the other 2.
Okay. There we go. So everyone can start moving their tokens now and voting on the proposals that you feel most strongly about. But
can somebody, sorry? Can somebody comment a little bit the third one, the commitment engine? How could it work? Or?
Yeah, okay. So the owner of that commitment engine can articulate on Tobias' question?
It sounds interesting, but yeah, to have a better impression what it can be, it would be nice to.
Do we have the initials of the proposals, or who is the owner of the proposal?
It was IJ, it was Indy, I think.
Okay.
So he may have left. It sounds like a mechanism for individuals to make public commitments and be held socially accountable with feedback. So it sounds sort of like staking. You know, you make a commitment, like you will cut your carbon footprint and be held accountable to that commitment with feedback from your fellow community members. So it sounds like some kind of like social staking mechanism almost.
Social scoring, a little bit Chinese, big brother is watching you.
Right.
Could be that.
Yeah.
Good comments from Andrej. There was one about, can I buy tokens? And yes, I think that in some systems. Like I could see a situation where you'd have projects that need funding. So of course, if you're willing to give money to fund the proposals, that gives you a say in which proposals get funded. And it would be natural in that situation and not otherwise to buy tokens. Yes, yes, yes. Please don't duplicate them for yourself.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get a reputation here, aren't I?
We haven't even started talking about blockchain or how to make sure there is no.
Yeah,
you know,
this is a toy. It has limits, and
yeah,
one of them
so.
is the. and Dan, yes, I understand the problem with not enough options. We were trying to simplify the exercise, but I agree totally.
So there is one part of this exercise that we have not told everybody yet, but because this is a meritocracy, actually Renzo, he has more tokens than everyone else. So we're going to give him an additional 15 tokens because he's spent much more time organizing this seminar than all of us. So it's wonderful that we have all been placing our tokens into these proposals. But we are going to see one last time the downfall of meritocratic voting systems is that Renzo calls the shots. So he voted all of his tokens on proposal 2, and we can see that even though this community had important discourse around these proposals, Renzo's tokens stole the show. So what we're going to ask Marc-Antoine to do is to readjust the size of those tokens, because we are going to move from pure meritocratic to quadratic voting. So while Renzo does have more tokens than the rest of us, they're actually worth diminishing returns. The more he votes for one proposal, the less those tokens are actually worth per token. So we can see how, if Marc-Antoine puts those tokens back in under proposal 2, that while Renzo does have more influence, he doesn't get to steal the show. So are there any other questions about quadratic voting, or there's one last type of voting we wanted to move into before we conclude this session, and I just want to be mindful of everyone's time. Were you able to move the tokens into, oh, they're still sitting there.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. So if we move Renzo's votes into proposal 2, you can see that he does have some additional impact, but he doesn't get to steal the show. So quadratic voting is basically a way that we can give some people more say, but also weight that and balance that so that the minority is still heard. Because if you give someone more tokens and it's just one token is worth one vote, then we run into problems as we've seen in these examples.
So I think here we can add the quadratic voting is based on like space rather than other dimension. So if you don't have any, do you have actually any question you would like to explore about this governance model? Without, then we're going to move on the other one with Jeff as well. We have anyway another part where we can discuss even further. I just want to point out how you could see the difference visually we would like to address is based on space. That you can see how the vote is different from others models. Do you have any observation that you would like to address now?
I guess that chart encourages civil attacks because it would be easier to distribute my voting tokens across multiple accounts so that the square root of 1 is 1 as opposed to, and I can have 100 of those as opposed to the square root of 100 being 10. So you have to have pretty tight civil resistance to go down the quadratic voting route.
Exactly, you nailed it. So as Philip pointed out, in a ecosystem with no identity, like in most of the crypto space today, if I had 100 tokens, I can just split those 100 tokens up between 100 addresses and vote from 100 addresses. So without strong identity, quadratic voting actually is not a good tool to balance those votes. It's prone to Sybil attacks. So that's a very good observation. And that, you know, this is why we don't see quadratic voting in the DAO space today, because we don't have strong self-sovereign identity. But as Renzo pointed out, quadratic voting was used in Colorado because obviously one person is one person. When you move it into a DAO space, you can have 100 addresses owned by one person. So it's useful for contexts where you have identity solutions in place. In Gitcoin grants, very good point, Juan. They basically mitigate Sybils by saying you only have one GitHub account. Now, of course, you could attack this by creating multiple Gitcoin accounts, but this also has some, attention cost, effort to put into that. So this is an early attempt at preventing Sybil attacks, but of course it could be gamed at some level. So we have to be careful when we start to introduce quadratic voting into systems. We need to be very careful with identity as well. And in this chart that's on the screen right now, we can basically see that a whale who has 1,000 tokens and a minnow who has 100 tokens. So the whale has 10 times the tokens, but when you put it through the quadratic weighting, they only have 3 times the influence, because when square root of 1,000 is about 30 and the square root of 100 is 10. So we have much more tokens, but we don't have much more that much more influence. So it's basically just a way to rebalance the weight in our community of influence. So the final form of governance that we will discuss today is conviction voting. And this is something that we've worked on quite a bit at the Common Stack. And it actually kind of moves away from voting more towards preference streaming. So this is like real-time vote streams, more or less. So if there was a proposal on the table, each user can cast their votes, but these votes can be changed at any time. And what these votes are doing, they charge up the conviction of a proposal. So you can think of this like a battery or like a capacitor. And each of the tokens that are asserted towards that proposal are charging up this battery. And when the battery hits a certain threshold of charge, then it passes the proposal. So this is a new type of voting, and it has some very interesting qualities. It allows for continuous input. It doesn't require people to vote on Thursday. Maybe on Thursday they have their kids' piano recital, or they're sick, or there's COVID going on. So they can cast their vote at any time. It also mitigates last-minute vote swings. So we've seen in some on-chain voting exercises in the Aragon AGP process, for example, there was a 4-day window to vote, and the first 3 days, it was looking very much like one proposal was going to pass, but then a whale came in, like in our meritocratic voting example, and put all their votes towards changing the vote at the very last minute. So this is basically an attack vector of time-based voting systems that is mitigated by conviction voting. Another interesting property of conviction voting is it moves us from consensus to consent-based decision-making. So one of the difficulties in decentralized governance is having, as Indy also mentioned, is the attention span. We need to get everybody together to vote on everything, which has some difficulties. Not everyone knows enough. Not everyone has the time to read into every proposal. So coming to consensus on every decision is quite difficult, especially in decentralized communities where you're not meeting in the same room. So conviction voting offers the opportunity to move to consent-based decision-making. Essentially, if this proposal is only asking for a small budget, it only requires a small amount of the aggregate community conviction to pass. So in this way, we can have small groups that are working on different things without everyone having to come together to decide what those things are. So this opens up a new opportunity for decentralized decision-making in DAO structures. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about conviction voting? Or
yeah, I have one. Why are you considering this consent? Consent means no objections. Instead, you could have a number of tokens that is high enough at some point to go beyond the threshold, but still having objections that are not integrated.
That's
so why
true.
This consent?
True. So a lot of these terms we're using a little bit loosely. You're very right. So actually, in a fully fledged conviction voting app, you may have tokens for and tokens against, and this conviction can actually flow higher or lower depending on if people are for it or against it. In the early days, we're focusing on very feature minimum functionality, just because we want to iterate on this in an engineering fashion. So we're only adding one feature at a time. So right now we only have the ability to vote for or support the proposal, and the conviction will grow. But the idea behind consent in this example is that if there are, you know, a dozen proposals that are just asking for a small amount of money, I don't have to go and read into every single proposal. The community that is, you know, the small group that is proposing that, if it is just a small amount of funds requested, they can basically pass that with a smaller amount of conviction, so that the whole community doesn't need to determine what is happening with every single proposal. Of course, we need to introduce the option to vote against in conviction voting as well, which we currently don't have that functionality, just because it's so early in the development of this new tool. But in that sense, it allows us to get a lot of things done without everyone being in on every decision. Does that make sense, Emmanuel?
Yeah, but that wouldn't still be consent, even having negative votes. You cannot ignore an objection in consent. That's consent.
You can unless it's well argued. If
Sorry?
it's just you can if it's not well argued.
That's
an objection.
No,
an objection can only be an objection. Say again, sorry.
That's allocracy. In theocracy, there is no validation. If an objection is connected to the aim, you cannot ignore it. It means that it's not.
Yeah, well, that's well argued. That's well presented. That's rationally presented. That's not an objection just because I don't like the look of your face.
Yeah, it depends on the focus, but nonetheless, it's not the number. So at the end, one could be enough for blocking the decision, or anyway, it's enough for changing the proposal. So it has to be integrated. That's the difference. And my big question is exactly how can you do that from a quantitative perspective? That's what you want to do algorithmically.
Right.
So I don't have the answer, but I wouldn't call it consent, even if you had negative votes, let's say.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I definitely, I hear what you're saying. Maybe perhaps there should be a block option. And this would be more consent, because you're right. Consent is no one opposes, as opposed to not everyone has enough time to read everything. So I guess it's kind of like attention constrained consent. You know, if you haven't put up a block, then it can go through. But you're right. This is actually great functionality to consider for conviction voting, because you don't want a bunch of small proposals to drain your community budget. So perhaps there should be some kind of block token that can be cast to bring this more towards consent. You're right, Emmanuel. There's also another flavor of conviction voting that we can consider. So rather than, in the last example, we looked at conviction voting charging up a battery to the point where there's a threshold in which the proposal passes. Well, sometimes in a community, we may not even need a proposal to pass. Perhaps we are setting, you know, a parameter on our community, like our communal tax rate, or perhaps a budget allocation. So again, we have these users who have, you know, different amounts of tokens, and they are charging up or discharging this battery to set a continuous parameter in our community. So maybe it's between 5 and 10% tax rate, for example. I think it should be 10%, so that moves the conviction higher. Renzo thinks it should be 5%, so that moves the conviction lower. And this is essentially dynamic average consensus. So this tool has some interesting properties beyond just passing proposals, but it's also a tool for collective intelligence in allocating shared resources. It allows the community to give dynamic, continuous feedback on policy choices in that community. And it allows for more natural flows and less political deadlock moving back and forth on these kinds of decisions. And we can just have people feeding their signal directly into these parameters, as many as we choose to design. Does this open up any new thoughts for people, or any questions or concerns of this kind of voting mechanism?
So there's no transfer of tokens.
Say again, Philip, sorry?
So there's no transfer of tokens. This is a weighted.
Correct. So
Yeah.
it's charging or discharging. You're not actually sending your tokens anywhere. You remain in control of those tokens at all times.
And how many batteries can I charge with my reserve then?
Presumably as many as are on the table. So if you are this person on the top, you have 100 tokens. You can put 5 tokens towards every proposal, or you can put 100 tokens towards a single proposal. And of course, you can layer on quadratic voting as well. So perhaps we want to say that you can put all of your tokens towards one proposal, but there will be diminishing returns to putting extra tokens towards a single proposal. So these are actually composable. You can have quadratic conviction voting if that was suitable to your context. And I think that's one of the most important things to take away here, is that there is no one governance system that works for every community. The context is very, very important. So some people may want to implement quadratic, some people may want conviction, some people may want quadratic conviction. There can be different contexts for each of these tools, and that's why we need to design them modularly and interoperably so that they can be composed. And that's a big goal of the common stack, is to design using token engineering so that these mechanisms can be used one on top of the other without breaking either of them, because sometimes we don't think about that. When you compose 2 simple mechanisms, it may cause nonlinear effects, and actually your governance system breaks down without you knowing where it's going to. So it's really important you design these to be modular from the start. Yeah, that's a great question, Juan. This is kind of forcing you to dilute your votes. Quadratic voting is essentially a tacit agreement that large token holders will be subsidizing minority token holders. And this seems counterproductive. Why would you give up some of your voting power? But essentially, this is to encourage the minority to stay involved. Because if Renzo has all the tokens and he's not willing to listen to the minority, then why would anyone stick around? Everyone's going to leave, and Renzo is the running his own one-person DAO. So, I mean, if he wants to do that, that's fine. But I think once we get into, you know, the age of DAOs, it will be much clearer that it is important to listen to the minority. So quadratic voting or other forms of weighted voting essentially will help to balance the power in these new governance systems. Right. So Renzo, I see we have about 12 minutes left. Would you like to carry through with the conclusion and summary?
Yeah, I was just wondering if I think there is still, it would be interesting if you can show the simulator for the, I think they had, I think you give even participant even more visualization of what we're discussing in the last couple of minutes.
Yes. So it's a little bit difficult to do an exercise in Miro like we chatted about, because when you introduce time, it makes things a little bit tricky to do in a demonstration. But we have this simulator. Let me just run it again so you can see what's happening. So we have a proposal here. This red line is the threshold, and these are each time step. So at time step 20, Griff stakes 1,000 tokens. So you can see his conviction is growing as soon as he started that. At time 30, Jeff changed his stake to also stake 1,000. That's the green line. So you can see the teal line here is the cumulative vote from Jeff and Griff. At time 50, Griff removed his stake. So again, the conviction threshold comes down. And then at time 60, Jeff says, you know what, I'm putting all my tokens towards this because I want this to pass. And of course, you can see the conviction passed the threshold and the proposal passes. So you can see in a couple of different examples here that, you know, how conviction voting plays out in a temporal setting. So sometimes in this example, actually the conviction never gets high enough to reach the threshold. So this proposal would be ongoing until more members of the community joined in. And this actually augments the social processes of the community, because, for example, if this is my proposal and I think, you know, Dan would be really interested in it, then I go and talk to him about it. I say, hey, Dan, I have this proposal that's active. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's trying to do X, Y, and Z. If you put some of your tokens behind it, we can push this conviction closer to the threshold and get this proposal passed by the community. So this is an interesting way that we can have votes that are on the table all the time and growing in conviction, and allow the social processes of dialogue and amendment to carry out naturally, while these actually act as signals for the community. So everyone can see what this community prioritizes. You know, if you have, you know, housing and UBI and, you know, social support in this community, you can see literally the signal of the community, how much they support these things or how much they oppose them. And you can choose which communities you want to belong to, which DAOs you want to belong to, based on the signals that they're putting out through conviction voting. Does anyone have any thoughts or feedback on conviction voting before we move into the closing conclusion and summary of the seminar?
Just a question for the quadratic voting. How does it count?
Mm-hmm. Would you like to articulate a bit better, like counts in relation to what exactly?
How is it in order for the number of tokens, for example? If I have, I don't know, 10 tokens from different people, and then I have maybe 9 from different people and 1 quadratic vote with, I don't know, three tokens. So this would be 12 tokens, or how does it work?
So the way that, I mean, it would really depend on the context of your community. So if your community says all votes will occur with a quadratic adjustment. So in this example, you can see that your first vote counts as 1 for both Jeff and Renzo, but Renzo's second, third, fourth, and fifth tokens will actually only count for 1 vote. So to cast a second vote for the same proposal, you have to cast that number times itself. So 4 tokens will get you your second vote. 9 tokens will get you your third vote. 16 tokens will get you your fourth vote. So in other words, you can have more preference. It's just going to cost you a quadratic amount of tokens to get that next vote.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
So just a quick question on the conviction voting. Kind of strikes me that it depends what else is running at the same time as your proposal.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's a feature or a bug?
Again, it depends on the context. So if you have, we actually, when we started doing simulations of conviction voting, we realized that if you have a bunch of proposals alive at the same time, there is the opportunity that conviction will not be great enough for any single proposal to pass. So we realized from these early simulations that we need some kind of stake. You have to stake something when you put up a proposal, because proposal spam could basically flood the system and conviction voting would no longer work. So yes, again, we're not proposing that any of these tools is the solution to governance, just that they are interesting new explorations in the governance landscape, and they can be used where the context is appropriate. And you can take it away, Renzo. I think we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, there is, Philip, you want to add anything else, or?
No, that's perfect, thank you.
Okay, no, you're welcome. I think we can just quickly summarize what we've been going through in today's session, so even what you heard so far. And this exercise, as much as it's been limiting in terms of what we wanted to show and discuss, I guess you can see how we all involved in this pyramid structure from traditional top-down, where we are basically under someone else's power. Therefore, here we want to revert the concept in DAO. So in terms of, instead of one legal entity, and you have different type of incentives from the top-down organization, we have basically your wage or your incentives based on money. With DAOs, I think if you switch slide, sorry Jeff, you can see how we never, I think, mentioned kind of smart contract blockchain so far, but DAOs, I think what we're trying to do is not to look at just the technological part, but blockchain and smart contract are governance technologies that could minimize the centralization of the power, and they try to resolve this principal agent dilemma, so that reducing bureaucracy with self-enforcing code. So they provide transparency, that they take the issue of one agent, and we want to try to address today with many insight, even in the conversation, how we want to spread over the power of the citizens. And of course, we need to discuss more needs, more nuances of any aspects of a proposal. So what are the main, I think, conclusions? I think there are, I thought to just highlight these three in terms of, so we look at decentralized platform governance as we want to create a purpose for a collective decision making, and that would be incentivized by network incentives. So even further, so DAOs, as many of you heard, is probably under this crypto world, but we need to try to get away from the crypto world, because DAOs are just these institutional patterns, and they can lower these barriers to local and global coordination. I think there are two examples, there are many, but what I also follow is Aragon and Colony. I think they're doing a very good job to trying to facilitate this transition. So, and eventually, if you start even building a software product or a financial service, so you want to consider an open network of users, so you can see how you can give voice and share more the value they contribute to create something different. So finally, I guess we all witnessing there is an organizational renaissance. So it's taking place, and today we had many examples. And in this session, we want to create an experiment where we create an intersection between governance technology, and Common Stack from Jeff is one example. With this also give it seeds. They're trying to create a financial ecosystem based on bioregion projects and dimensions. So I think today, every one of us here, we want to try to create a new future. And we try to also be accountable in each of our projects, locally, globally, in organization, to include and empower each and every one to create a collective impact in society. So I think we have 2 minutes left if you have any feedback or any other questions. But most importantly, I'd like to share, I think in the chat, I prepared just a very short survey that will help me as to develop this concept further. So I will drop here now in the chat to everyone. So in the chat here, you have the survey, and I would kindly ask you your feedback just have 5 questions, and that would help to design even better the next session. If you want a follow-up of this session, please drop your email address in the chat, and I will be very happy to write you a follow-up of what we've done today and the potential of the next session. So if you have any other questions now, please feel free to ask questions. We still have 1 minute, and then I think we need to go back to the main room, and please feel free to ask any questions now if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, let's pretend that the what, I don't know, there's 20 of us here or whatever. Let's pretend that we decided that we wanted to create an organization together. Okay. I think it would be at the initial level, at the beginning stage, it may be a little slow going to figure out what everybody's needs are. But if there are 20 of us here, there's probably only like 4 or 5 fundamental needs that we need to address. And once each of us understands those fundamental needs, if I propose something just thinking about my own needs and my projection of my own needs into the world, I'm going to come up with a half-assed proposal. But if I go around and find out what your needs are and intersect them and synthesize them with my needs, and I try to come up with a proposal that helps all of us as much as I help myself, and if we all do that, there's going to be a convergence of our proposals from the very beginning. And as I see your proposal based on that thing, and we may just all come to and go, great idea, we don't even need to vote. Let's just take Frank's, Joe's, and Pete's proposal, take the best part of them, and we're done. We don't need to vote, and we co-develop it and co-do it together, and we're all willing to contribute because we all see our needs met. And so this is why I'm getting cognitive dissonance a little bit with this.
That's
I
not how
see
the world
the
works.
process where, I'm sorry.
But that's not how the world works. As soon as you get a group of more than 20 people, that's not how they make decisions. It's not, that doesn't, well, at least
that's how it has been working, and that hasn't been working, Philip. It's not working. That method is not working.
The problem is scale, always. It's very easy for a 10-person, 15-person group. I mean, this is,
That's what I meant.
the Dunbar numbers, right? There's the team number, there's the Dunbar number, and up to a certain point it works. And yes, we can do it fractally like Sociocracy does, but at some point you'll find a divergence, and then you have to, and this is what I believe in, by the way, Dan, don't get me wrong. You have to have small teams that can do it at the right scale and then mesh these proposals together. And that is work, and that is alignment work. And then you'll find that, we agreed on 5, 6 great ideas between the groups. And then, okay, what is the priority and how is that more important than this? And then you're back to some kind of way to choose something against another. There's always a priority. There's always even if we agree on all the goals, we have to decide how one thing goes over another. And I agree with you. Let's do this through harmony and consensus as much as possible, and consent, of course. But even there are devils in the detail when you scale up, and you need all you can, including vote.
I also want to, sorry, I want to give you one other layer then, and I want to also your feedback. So again, I agree with the voting, but if you look at responsibility and incentive for deliver something for the community, do you still think that there is no need to, let's say, create as a public exchange of responsibility, not just based on voting, but you can create your vote that could be tokenized. Let's say there is a smart contract that says, this is my role, this is my responsibilities, I will deliver this, and everybody see what I'm doing. So instead of voting for a proposal, what about the voting for my own task and my responsibilities?
Pledges are a form of voting.
Yeah,
if you think about voting.
Voting, I'm not saying voting, just proposal.
A pledge, yeah, I mean, let's just say like an informed, like let's not say it's an official, like it's voting day, right? Let's not say it's an election for, you must be at a certain point, you must vote on a proposal. If people are just randomly throwing out proposals over the course of the year and people can go and vote on stuff, fine. But I don't think that leads to actual real decisions. That just gives people kind of a feel. It's like on Facebook or something. You get, a bunch of people like a post, right? You get a sense of what your community likes or not, which can be useful in a background sense, but that's not real decision making. My concern with this, if you don't have that convergent facilitation happening at the beginning and throughout the whole process, you can end up with polarization and bifurcation. Like, for example, today, the top 3 that were chosen today did not resonate with me at all. So what if this happened in the community? I would just pull away. and I would lose from the engagement by interacting with all of your intelligences and your knowledge and your wisdom, and you would lose by not having me participate. And I would argue if with a deeper convergent facilitation, we would be forced to learn and do perspective taking. This voting does not facilitate perspective taking. And that, without that perspectival knowledge, we're all losing a deeper level of wisdom.
But it's not an either or.
The entire community loses because of that.
I think I'm so sorry, but they're calling me from the main room, and since they're waiting for us, we're the latest. I didn't want to interrupt this the beautiful conversation. So I'm sharing in the chat in case you need like the link to go back to the main room, and so we're going there back to share our last insights. Thank you a lot for the passion that you put on it, and thanks a lot to Jeff, Renzo, and Marc Antonio to take care of this, designing, facilitating, and inspiring all the people. I saw that you were quite in it. I was trying to follow as much as possible while coordinating with the other. Big hug.
Thank you very much, everyone that follow so far. Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.
Bye. Ciao.